Hi, everybody. Welcome to the new normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa, and today is Woo Woo Wednesday. So I've got my buddy Public Awakening at my side, my loyal partner in crime on Wednesdays. But I also have a special treat. I've got Ken Swartz here from the Purple Power C60, and it's something that my family has been taking for a long time. It's helped me with my back issues, some other things, but I've also recently bumped into a video where they were talking about it helping with grief. And you guys know my story where I lost my daughter at 7.5 years old. We recently lost my father, and I'm watching my mom go through her grieving process with that. And so I wanted to talk to Ken Schwartz about that and see how C60 plays a role in that and what we can do to help people learn more about that. So stick with us, and we'll be right back after this. Hi, Ken. Welcome back to the show. Good to have you.
Good to be on.
Public, how are you doing today?
Howdy. I'm doing good. I'm doing very well. Thank you. How are you doing today, Lisa? Lisa Litecoin.
I'm good. Yesterday was our last day of homeschool, community day. So it was a bit exhausting, but actually today Cannon is having another episode of his cyclical vomiting syndrome. And so the timing of this, we actually booked Ken to be on a couple weeks ago because I had watched a video mom had sent me. She was like, this so resonates with me. We'd just lost my dad a couple months ago. It feels like just yesterday. But after 90 years, Papa said it was time for him to transition. And it was a beautiful experience. We were all there at home together, but she's still going through this grieving process, but she's having this physical response from it. And so she's like, she believes in the product. It's what kept her dog alive for 18 years with a partial kidney. Ken, I've told you the story so many times. And then her little dog just passed a couple days ago. So Nana's just really had it hit at her, just hand over fist lately. And she's having these physical impacts on her body with grief. And my little boy, like I said, so we went through all these right after Mia died. His best friend, my daughter, we called them the twins. They were 6 months apart, born with the same heart malformation, but from different birth mothers. They were just so close. And right after that, he started having these, what they called cyclical vomiting syndromes or migraines in his stomach. And they said what would happen is the grief or trauma would build up and manifest physically in their body and then hit this tipping point. And that's the way their body would get rid of it, is he would go through anywhere from 3 to 5 days of retching or vomiting and having this migraine response, and then not being able to get rid of that in another way. And he's in pain and can't sleep. It's just a miserable experience for this kiddo. And it's anywhere from every 2 to 4 weeks. We had gotten it down. I felt like once we started homeschooling and trying to reduce some stress on him and doing some different treatment, breathing treatments and talking to him about, do you feel what anxiety feels like in your body, recognizing those feelings in your body, going kind of some therapy, biofeedback stuff. But then when mom sent me that video that was on the Purple Power C60 channel with Dr. Amy, I thought, well, maybe C60 could be something that might be helpful to him to relieve whatever this physical response that's happening because of the grief response in his body that's then turning into a physical response again. And I wondered, does that make sense to you? Is my mom gut on the right path? Or can you explain kind of what that response is where grief is triggering this physical response in our body and causing stress on our body and damage to our body.
Well, yeah, physical grief really can cause inflammation. Now, first off, I'm not a medical doctor and can't give medical advice.
Right.
Just letting people know that. Yeah, it can cause real physical damage and stress, and it's a lot of the hormones are released, cortisol and the other things, and then as these break down, and other things that kind of happen in that biochemistry, you get oxidative radicals that are produced, which then can go on to do. Now it's C60 is kind of like what C60 does is it's an antioxidant really, and it can help reduce the level of those oxidative radicals which are causing damage. Because what happens is you get too much oxidative radicals, and then you get the inflammation, and then the inflammation causes more, and it's kind of sort of like a cascading effect. And you suppose, like it sounds like in your son, it's manifesting in the gut lining. So that's something. By the way, we can't recommend the use of C60 by children. It's an adult choice. But
Okay.
the parents or others. I mean, we've had lots of parents tell us they've had successes with it, but as a thing, we can't say directly for children. But they do.
Okay.
They've had some good responses, especially for the athletics. That's where we hear C60 does amazing things. But yeah, I mean, it's just getting the inflammation down is what C60 really helps to do. And
Getting that oxidative stress out of it kind of helps clean your body out from. So it's not that C60 is an active response, but the damage that's done from the grief response, C60 kind of captures that and cleans it up, removes it from your body.
And another thing that's not with that, because a lot of these hormones, they actually are processed by the liver. Obviously, C60 is going to help mitochondria, help the liver process them, but they're kind of bound up and go out into the gut through the gallbladder. And so if you're eating, one of the really good things is important to eat a high fiber meals, so that stuff binds with the fiber and goes out, rather than just being reabsorbed back in the lower intestine. So that's an important thing also, is to eat like a high fiber diet at that time.
That's a great point, because he's like Mr. He loves carbs and, doesn't want to, he's a kid. He'll have a quesadilla,
Mm-hmm.
That's good to know. One, also when you're grieving, one of the things that, so my friend Amy Fulmer and I are talking about starting to do possibly even some grief retreats, but we really want to help. We both are angel moms or mothers that have lost children for different reasons. And we want to, once crypto's moon, one of our goals, I turned 50 this year. And so I was really challenged, like, what does your life look like in 5 years? What are your goals? And one of the things I want to do is, help other families leave a legacy for, I want Mia's life to touch as many lives as it can. And so we want to start doing, reaching out to some other families through my charity that we started for Mia called Team Mighty. We do, Mia's birthday is this Friday, every April 15th, Daddy's little tax deduction. We celebrate her birthday, and we'll be making some announcements on the show and stuff. But we're talking about it, and we're like, what if we started putting more resources out there for grieving? Because it's kind of like nobody talks about it. There's not a lot of resources out there to handle grief. There's a couple books. We're even like I said, talking about doing a retreat or something. And so I thought about introducing people to this C60 as being an option for that physical response, something that might be helpful to you, especially after watching that video. So just think all of those kind of things, and having those opportunities and somewhere to talk about it, where we don't have the grief cooties. People just don't know what to say or how to kind of go about those kind of things.
Well, one of the things with grief is, it really causes trauma, and that trauma can get buried. And that's with, Dr. Amy Apigian. She you need to deal with that trauma, because it's just going to be hiding out down below and rising to the surface every now and then and causing problems. But if there's, there's the various things you need physically to support your health, and that's really important. And then there's some of the other work that that they do to bring out that old trauma, deal with it, and then it doesn't become a constant problem anymore.
Well, and what about the grief that people are facing with? I think people are at this tipping point that we're not ever going back to what life used to be. Like we're either facing something new or so many things. Like, I just was with one of my good friends, and she works part time, or part of her gig is at a large business in downtown Chicago. And she said, it's so depressing. I look across the building, and she said, there's just dead plants in the other buildings where I used to see people's faces. And she said, no one's coming back. There's people moving out of these big cities. Like life is just changing so much. And I don't think it's going to go back anymore. Now it's exciting that there's a new future moving ahead, I think. And I'm the queen of hopium and been called the hopium hustler. I don't know how many times, mostly by myself, I think. But for people that are now facing, maybe they lost their job, that's a grief. They lost a relationship because of having different beliefs in this change of reality or our world right now. Those are all forms of grief as well, and can cause that oxidative stress on your body. So we may all be starting to have these physical effects of grief on our body, and it just kind of starts compounding it. And before you know it, it's just a little harder to get out of bed, a little harder to go meet your friend for that walk that you need to take around the block. And those are those things that I think that if you're, diligent about something like taking your C60 every morning, that might kind of help boost you to that next level of health.
Well, part of that's the dopamine suppression cycle. It's kind of grief causes inflammation, which is, there's two types of inflammation. You have the chronic, when you twist your ankle, it kind of swells up, it gets immobilized, but also there's all those markers for inflammation when that happens go out, and they actually cause suppression of dopamine, which is your motivation molecule. That's your molecule that gets you out of bed in the morning. And so, and that's natural if you had acute inflammation, because they don't, your body doesn't want to be you walking around on that ankle. And once you just lie around until ankle gets better, and then the swelling goes down, and the dopamine returns, and then you can go back around your life. Well, that works great for acute, and it's beneficial for acute inflammation. But when you have chronic inflammation, which is caused by a wide thing, so it can be caused by grief is one of them, and also things like arthritis or gut irritation, because that's another one. And then that whole dopamine cycle gets activated, but then that causes, so you're lying around the couch, then you don't get the exercise you need, and you don't get because people are social creatures, they need social interaction. And so that doesn't happen, and then depression can get in because you lose that social connection, and it just goes on and on. Now, one thing C60 can do is get rid of the inflammation so that your dopamine levels can rise back up. And then once the dopamine levels you get that kind of motivation to go start your life again and do the things that you did, to resume that cycle that you do, that, kind of the comfort, everything that you do during a day, it's kind of how you do every day, you have that cycle. And when you return to that cycle then and get the exercise as well, that does a whole bunch of benefits. I mean, there's emotional stuff still has to be dealt with, but, back doing what you can for the physical side of things is really important.
When you look at this lockdown, it was so calculated, especially when just listening to what you're saying with all of those scientific factors, the social aspect of it and how that affects us, and how it gets you into this cycle where one begets the other, and it just it starts compounding on itself. It could really put people in some dangerous psychological. I know there was just a study that came out about the psychological effects of the lockdown on teens recently over these past few years, and I saw one on young children for their speech delays and their psychological development or their emotional development in the toddlers and stuff. It was really, really tragic. But
yeah, well, one thing actually that people can do is getting out in nature. They found that just walking among the trees and the grass and the flowers and stuff, just for half an hour, will significantly reduce, markers of stress in the body. I mean, it's because maybe we're meant to be in nature and we live in artificial all the time. So if you can get people out into nature for, an hour or two a day, or certainly a few times every week, that just does a huge amount of benefit for them.
And is that just the vitamin D, the
Oh, no, it's
sunshine, or just any form of nature?
it's not the vitamin D and the sunlight. It's just kind of being in that environment.
Okay.
There's something about being in the trees and the grass and the birds and just being in nature that calms the person. And of course, maybe grounding wouldn't hurt either. That's take off those shoes and kind of rebalance your electrical field with the earths.
And that's all that magnetic. We were studying on our last day of school. The kids all got a compass, and they had a challenge to do an escape room challenge. Otherwise, you couldn't go home for summer break. And they were using their compass and had to make sure that they didn't have any magnets or anything in their pockets. And they were talking about, how important the magnetic fields were and all that, and knowing the difference between their true north and their magnetic north, and how the pilots had to learn to figure the difference between the true north and the magnetic north. And then I got on a plane and went to a Bitcoin conference last weekend, and I was sitting there thinking, like, okay, I bet Ken has a good story about this.
Oh yeah, well, the problem is the Earth's magnetic pole is moving, so you have to, if you're a pilot, you have to update that all the time. In fact, they do it at the airports. They have to do the maps all the time, magnetic maps, the physical maps, because the pole's moving to Siberia. It's leaving us for Russia. So, oh well.
Because it's really the what?
The pole. It's the North magnetic pole is heading. It used to be up in northern Canada, and then it just passed by the north rotational pole, and now it's moving out toward Siberia, and it's going to clip like 20 or 30 miles a year. I don't know. I haven't actually seen for the last couple of years. It's like NOAA used to provide us the location of the North magnetic pole all the time, and now you can't find it anymore. It's like they won't even give us the where the location of the North magnetic pole is. It's like, why are you doing this? I used to be able to go in and find it all the time, but now it's like hidden, and we pay the bill for that. It's ridiculous.
That's interesting. Why do you think they don't want us to know where it is now?
I don't know, because they're just the control freakism. That's they just have a thing where by deleting, by just limiting what people know as a rule, they don't want you, they don't want us to do this, they don't want to see that. They try to just sequester information from us, so we don't have information, we can't make decisions, or give us fake information, which is pretty popular these days.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Overall control, I guess, right? It's just the least you know about everything, or something, is the least you know about everything. Total control system.
Well, and that all starts with the media, but that's starting to be unwrapped. I think there's a lot of stories that we've been following on this channel for the last few years that at this point they're coming out in mainstream media, and we're like, they're kind of a nothing burger to us at this point. But now they're out in mainstream media. My friend Sean was on yesterday, and he goes, yeah, but that's part of the tactic, is they were dismissed as hype, just like Area 51. Well, when people were first hearing about it, discredit that. That's crazy. And then by the time it's out, it's like, yeah, everybody knows about that. And it's a nothing burger. Do you see that as a possibility of kind of the narrative of today?
I don't know, maybe, well, that is obviously what's going on. I mean, mine more in the science sector of things, and maybe a bit of the medical. And of course, we all know the lies that came out there and the lies that are still coming out. And I mean, it's just they just lie until facts force them to admit a truth. But by then, there's another pack of lies that they're putting out, and it doesn't matter anything. I had an economics degree, but it's even that's worthless. You have to go to shadow stats to find the real statistics, because everything that comes out, the inflation rate, the unemployment rate, this rate, that any statistical information you get from the government is just lies. I mean, they just readjust it to make it look whatever they want, and and they change it all the time. So there's just it's hard to make decisions when it's a moving target and you don't have real data to base anything on.
or delayed distraction. Yeah, definitely. Well, that is kind of what I wanted to focus on, was just that powerful, I guess, delayed distraction, what we're going through right now, and how much we can really make choices together to choose alternatives, and how much it was physically affecting us. you know I just think we're all going through this together. Public, what are you over there milling through?
I am just taking this all in. It's
Because I know you had questions. I'm trying not to like overstep you here.
I was working on my questions today. I didn't really
Okay,
get
because
them
I
ready,
can go down another rabbit hole.
Yeah,
but-
go ahead. I mean, I as I've said a million times, I love C60. I love Purple Power. I've been taking it for over 4 years now. It's done just what Ken says as far as reducing inflammation. It's rebuilt the joints in my shoulders, and this is me talking. I don't want to, I'm no doctor either. I only play one on the interwebs, but it's literally rebuilt my joints. I was in that motorcycle accident. I got all banged up and twisted around from that. I had 27 years of landscaping experience where I was out in the field every day with with our family business. And the differences and the changes that I've felt over the last few years, I honestly never thought I would feel this way. It's that big of a difference to me. So I'm a huge fan. I recommend it to literally everyone I talk to. CBD, C60, and it's right on. I mean, I certainly can be the poster boy for how well somebody can do on this.
Well, and
it's turning my hair darker.
Yeah, and it turns
my
your
hair
hair
used
darker.
to be white. Yeah, which is awesome.
My husband's been using it before his workouts. When we watched the video, or maybe it was after our last video, where you were talking about giving you the boost when you used it in the coconut oil base, like the MCT oil. So he's been using it before his workouts for that. And I thought that was really interesting, where you guys have done some, I guess, internal studies with athletes, or working with athletes with the C60.
Yeah, it really helps. Well, the MCTs, that's medium chain triglycerides for those listening out there. And they turn into ketones. Your liver turns into ketones, which your cells can use as fuel. So it's essentially instant ketosis, and it's like flex fuel for it's really good for people with glucose processing issues. So you have flex fuel. So even if your body, got insulin resistance or can't access the glucose, it can access the ketones. And so it's like instant energy source, and you don't get that crash in cellular metabolism that can happen when, energy sources are shut off.
I've also noticed that I've noticed a steady, I take my C60 in the morning with my coffee, I mix it in, and I noticed which I've also always used, a good teaspoon of coconut oil in with it, and I blend it together with a little immersion blender. And I've noticed I don't need a second cup of coffee ever when I have my C60 in the morning. It's a nice sustained, no peaks, no drops, which is crazy because I came from like 50 coffees a day out in the field, or Red Bull, or you name it. And that's all been gone for years, only since I started with the C60.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah, just to be careful. You don't want to take it too late at night because it tends to keep you up. So take that in the morning, or maybe in noontime. Yeah, and I see there's a one below that. What C60 can help reduce pain. That's one of the things it does, as well as like it reduces inflammation, and pain has something to do with inflammation because things are messed out. So because they cause oxidative stress and all that. Like for instance, you can take C60 topically, and like if you get a mosquito bite and it's itching, you put it on this mosquito, about 20 minutes later, the itching stops. Mm-hmm. So if you got like pains and stuff and itching in your body, I guess you could take C60, and it takes a while to circulate, but once it gets around, it definitely reduces pain and like other little irritations that people have.
I know I used it on my sunburn when we were out in Arizona with Bix and Amy. I was out. I got a little too much sun on my chest when we were out because weren't out there for very long. But it's the beginning of the season, and I didn't have any sunblock, and we all got to talking, and I was like, "Oh no!" And then they were like, "I was like, oh, don't worry, I have my C60." So, and then they said they met up with you in New Mexico at the next meetup.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I want to hear about that as well. Are you guys based in New Mexico? Or that's
Well, we're in Colorado. We're kind of like in the Denver metroplex area. Kind of we're scattered about. We're kind of like
okay.
a meat company. Everybody works pretty much from home, and we have a production facility, and then I guess a customer fulfillment place. Some people do that for us. So kind of it's it's kind of different. I guess we were an e-company before this all went down.
Before
so
that was, yeah. So you were primed and ready for all this. Different. So Jay is asking, could somebody like me, and we don't give advice, I guess, or don't claim to make any cures, or I don't know the full legal disclaimer, but he's giving his situation. He says he has scoliosis, 2 fissions, spine, still 5 ruptured discs, and degeneration. Is that something that could help? I'm at the point I just have to deal with it. So I guess
I think it'll help with the pain and some of that's probably help, and maybe topically it can get in there. I mean, it does, C60 does increase stem cell production, so it would probably slow the degeneration process. In my unqualified opinion, it definitely does that, and it's restorative joints. I mean, and nerve fibers. Because I crashed my motorcycle a couple of times and other things, and I'd had some nerve damage, from the bones and all that kind of stuff. So I noticed that, that it's really helped like restore nerve function and joint functionality. So, I mean, the spine is, part of there are a bunch of joints in the spine. So they probably would help there as well. In scientific studies of animals, they found that it not only got rid of the inflammation, but it helped regrow cartilage, which was unexpected. But that's part of
with the disc issues that would be huge.
I would take it for that. Absolutely. I said previously how I got to a point where after all the years of landscaping and exercising and just the manual labor I was doing, my joints were, I was started to get, within 3 years, I had 3-4 surgeries, all just continual injuries on top of injuries, where I think all came down to my joints. They were just so loose, my shoulders, my knees, my ankles. I noticed, and people were noticing about me. I had like almost a wobble in my walk when I was taking steps, and my joints were always I was always conscious of bending over and picking things up extremely properly, because I always felt things started to move in my joints. And after about 1.5 years, 2 years, I didn't think about that anymore. And all of my joints got tighter and stronger. I did no special separate exercises or treatments or anything for it. It was only, and I dealt with this for 15 years at this point. And then it was only once I started taking the Purple Power was that I noticed a definite strengthening of I always imagined it as the ball in the socket just kind of fit tighter and snugger and stronger, and I didn't have that wobbling that I had inside. That's my experience with it.
Yeah, I see that. How's hair growth? Yeah, see, that's actually the second scientific study on humans that they did with C60. They applied it topically and found that it would increase hair growth. And people that take C60 notice that their hair grows longer and their nails grow longer and faster. And also, so it doesn't, I think it changes the color of your hair. One thing it doesn't do, it doesn't appear to, it'll slow down like male pattern baldness. And people that have lost their hair for other reasons, it tends to bring that hair back. But it doesn't restart hair follicles, unfortunately, that have gone like dormant, which would be nice. But certainly it helps preserve what you have and make it, longer and shinier and stronger. And especially if you're getting older too, I would definitely, if you're going to definitely, a thing to help would be like B12 and like a general B supplement. That's just one of those things. I'm not a medical doctor, can't get medical advice. But as we get older, our capacity to process the B vitamins go down, and they're really important. So if you got some gray hairs, B12 or a B general supplement would be a good idea to add separate from your multivitamin, just because you need that little extra bit. It just tends to be that way.
Interesting. Well, so since you are in the mostly science field, and that's what the most exciting thing is, what do you see that's the most exciting thing in science right now?
That's a good question. I mean, things are improving everywhere. I don't know. Some of the things like the discovery of planets around stars, foreign stars. We have, we discovered a whole bunch of planets that look better than life than Earth.
Oh, really?
And so that's pretty amazing. And as technology, we got that new telescope that just went out into the web, maybe. I can't remember what the name of it is. It's moving out beyond the orbit of the moon. It's kind of between. So that will actually be we'll be able to see a lot more of that kind of stuff.
Are these planets that we would actually be able to reach?
Well, we can't do it on chemical rockets. I mean, we've teleported photons. So, and we have entanglement things where, like, we design devices. We create entanglement devices where you get like two oxygen atoms. They pounce them against a thin gold sheet, and then when they pop out, you can take them and put them in like little silicon traps. And when I flip one up, the other one automatically flips down. And so theoretically, you could have a cell phone on Earth, and you could call Mars in real time, or 1,000 light years away in real time. So we've already done that, and we've also done it with photons. So technically, if we had done it right, we could like synchronize. Like, we could send a photon to one place, and the photon goes through a long distance to another place, and then you could maybe synchronize resonators within like a device, and then they would be able to communicate in real time, which would be nice for computers, because imagine you get a little chip in the mail from somebody which has synchronistic things. You plug it in, and that's your internet. It's almost infinitely fast in real time, no electromagnetic waves, no photons or anything. It's just there. I mean, they may already have things like that there, but that's something we can already do now. The ability that same technology should give us eventually, theoretically, we should be able to jump light years and stuff.
Would that be a way to have like free energy, free mining of crypto, those kind of things?
Well, it would certainly increase the speed. Free energy, nothing's free in nature. It's like solar energy is kind of like free energy, but you got to build the solar panels to collect it.
Okay.
And it's the same way like hydrothermal's free energy, but you got to build the dam to do it. And there are other energy sources out there that we can tap into, which are what we call quote free energy, but you still got to build a device to
either capture it or relay it, or
I mean, that's like a lot of the flying saucers. They pull like what's called etheric or prana chi energy out of the sky, and even out of outer space, because space is not a vacuum. It's quote a vacuum, but it's not empty. It has permeability and permittivity. It has barriers. It's something. It's not a nothing, like people say. And you can actually pull energy right out of it and fly around. They have that capacity. We have that. Our military has that capacity, but it just doesn't want to share it with us. There are some, problems with that, pollution-wise, or how it can damage things. I used to go to an energy conference in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I think it used to be the Bedini conference. Now they call it like New Energy or something conference. And I actually saw them where they had these machines, which would, they're batteries and rotors that would do something, and you could actually see them. They turn them on, and you'd watch the battery charge while they were running like lights and little motors and stuff, and they literally charge themselves off the environment. Of course, you can't be too close to them because they can pull energy out of you. So that's one of the minor things. You have to put them on the back 40 if you're going to be pulling energy out of the environment.
Very interesting. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be some kind of science fair to go to.
Yeah, I think it's in July. It's in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It used to be the Bedini conference, and now they call it like New Energy or something like that. I can't remember the exact name at the moment, but yeah, it'll be there this July if you're near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It'd be fun to go to.
We can do a meetup there.
That does sound super cool, though. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well.
So thoughts on the whole Nikola Tesla thing? I've always thought, does like deeper dive stuff here, do you think he gets more credit than due? Do you think he's what do you think of his? Because this was reminding me on his Tesla towers. There's that weird Tesla tower type building that's gone up in Texas, I believe, right, Lisa? And I was reading just recently on his theories that every meter above the ground, there's 200 volts available electricity for each one you go up. That's why he calculated the Wharton Dyke Tower, I believe it's called, and it created at that height to pull the energy in. And supposedly that worked until it was shut down. They were able to send real time all kind of stuff over to England, I believe, at the time.
Yeah, it was kind of like a radio tower, and it had like it could put resonant energy in there, and he doesn't get even a fraction of the credit that is due to him.
Okay. And
because at the end, when he died, like 20% of the economy in the United States and a big part of the world was actually due to his inventions. And technically, if he had benefited from what he had created, he'd be, he didn't die in poverty. He died in like Waldorf Astoria, right? I think General Motors or something. Westinghouse was paying his bills, but yeah, he doesn't get it. And one of the things also, I mean, there's things like we used to have the Tesla Museum down here in Colorado Springs, but they had to shut it down because one of the curators was selling things out of the back door. But yeah, things like that happen. But there's a lot of things like the Tesla towers down in Colorado Springs. What Tesla used was I guess you call it railroad wire. And I don't know if you've seen the railroads. You see the wire alongside the railroads. If you actually look at that wire, it's steel cord with a copper coating, because the electrons or the electromagnetic waves of oscillating waves in wires are actually, it's the electromagnetic waves kind of drags the electrons along. And so they drag them, and they also spiral as they're being dragged. And so they always on the outside of the wire. So they found that they could put a steel core, which makes the wire much stronger. It's mostly 90% steel with just a thin coating of copper on it. And then that's what it is. And so a lot of those things, well, the Tesla coils don't have steel cores. Well, actually, they did have steel cores, because in those big ones that he built out in Colorado Springs, he used railroad wire in them, because the high voltage would travel on the outside and the steel was on the inside. So they literally had cores. So those guys built the tower didn't know that. I mean, you can go down to the Colorado Museum. It's still there. They just locked it up, so you have to get an appointment, but you can take a look at some of the stuff that he built. And yeah, a lot of that stuff that he built was with railroad wire and not with like regular pure copper wire. So there's things like people don't really know that it's shared, but if you didn't know it, you didn't know it.
You mentioned if he had gotten his dues. I had read somewhere a while back that he was originally due a very small royalty for each kilowatt produced off Niagara Falls. And apparently if he had gotten his royalties, he'd be like the first acknowledged trillionaire or multi-trillionaire.
Oh yeah, exactly. But that never happened. And then Edison cheated him out of $50,000.
Yeah.
With that's one of the reasons why they never shared they never got a Nobel Prize, because the Nobel Prize Committee wanted to give a Nobel Prize to Tesla and Edison, share the prize, and neither would agree to that they could share a prize. They would take a prize on their own, but so that never really happened. Otherwise, Tesla would have had a Nobel Prize at least.
Yeah,
but that is so interesting. So right now, I have been asked to be a host on the Very Dow channel, and for Veritasium and the Reggie Middleton's project.
Oh yeah.
And he has the 2 patents for the original like DeFi basically, and getting so much. I mean, people are suing him like crazy. People are going after him, calling him names, but he's really trying to look at, or this is my opinion, I'm speaking for myself, but he's, in my opinion, trying to look out for the little guy and trying to say like, patent your ideas. And there's this whole idea in cryptocurrency of, open software. And I get like sharing your ideas or open software, but also patenting your ideas, because like we're at this tipping point where the big boys are coming in and they're bringing their lawyers and they're going to steal your stuff like what they did to Tesla.
Well, yeah, but they'll do that anyway. That's they used to have a thing first invented. Now it's first filing. And then when you put your patent in, it actually sits there for 6 months unless you go straight. And that time, what happens is, just put it in here and sit there. The CIA runs the patent office in the back end. So they'll go in there and they have guys literally that will sift the patents. If they find something that thinks might be useful, they'll send it to one of the associate corporations, who will then before you get to the gate, they will already have the patents there trying to rip you off. I'm just saying, it's like I did the metal oxygen fusion reactor project. Even though we had third-party confirmation, they just won't approve of it. But doesn't matter. Everybody else in the world has it now, and they'll have their own little few
So
working.
you've had your own patent experiences where you
Oh
feel
yeah,
like,
and with that of my friends, it's if it's small and minor, they won't, they'll probably let it through. But if it's big, they set it up different ways, because it's just as crooked as could be. Because when we did it, because it was nuclear fusion, we had a CIA guy doing the processing for it. And of course he didn't have but then he knew it worked and everything. So he kicked it down to this low-level scumbag at the patent office who denied it, because he wasn't going to put his name on that, because it's like all these other guys, someday it's going to come back and haunt him. Here's the guy that banned this, right? Said this can't possibly work. Well, it already worked, and the CIA guy knew it. So he gave it to this other loser who was a retard, and he just banned it. And so his name will go down in infamy, whereas the other guys didn't, because it was an atomic process.
So I guess
sorry,
one quick question. So if knowing this now and having obviously a much better idea of how these things work, if somebody does have that really good idea, what would be the best path for them to follow to actually see it through?
No, I mean, you could do the patenting process and put it in there. You could go for a world patent. That's about $50,000, a little expensive. For you can do it yourself. You can patent yourself for a really low cost, and then just put it in there and process it through. Because it's like they have a special thing for self-patenters, and you just go ahead and do that. And then, I mean, the other thing is to sue their ass at the end of the line after they try to use it. Of course,
so there's less of a chance.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. So there's less of a chance with self-patenting to have your ideas stolen like that.
Yes, and they're because they will help work with you to do that. But also, it's easier to take them to court. Like if you had a lawyer that you did it yourself, then you have it's the same way if you go and do your own your own lawyer when you do a court case. You have all kinds of ways because you're a citizen, not a lawyer doing it. The court actually has to help you file it and make it work. They're literally obligated to do that, and also gives you all kinds of more appeals and powers than if you did. I think Cliff High talks about that. He's had several videos where he talks about how being your own lawyer, pro se lawyer, you get all kinds of benefits, and it doesn't cost you jack, right? You're not $400 an hour, and so you can do a lot of things legally just by doing it yourself. You just learn how to do it, work at it. There's people to teach you, and then you just put it in. It's the same with the patent. It takes a little longer, but you can get it in there, and it also gives you better basis to sue them. When these guys, they can deny it all they want, and maybe they'll have a big corporation try to sneak in and steal Moxie, but good luck on that, because you can't build. Just to tell you, you can't build technology in the U.S. anyway. So when the first Moxie reactor comes out of Japan, or working one, commercial size one comes out of Japan or China or something, well, it's they won't be. They'll have to be. U.S. government will legally liable for denying my patent. And I'll sue their ass for $1 trillion.
You have to have all the documentation that you applied and on what day and before all this happened.
Yeah. It works. It's third-party document. There's like 8 different cases of showing this is actually real by other researchers, and so it's like 8 times third-party verified, but they still denied it. But that's just the way they do it. It's in the Lenner cold fusion category, but it's not really cold fusion. It's a different process. And so they just throw that in there but it doesn't matter. The U.S. is not the leader anymore, and other countries already are developing it. And soon, before long, they're going to have commercial products that they're going to be offering. And at that point, what's the patent office going to say? They won't be able to say anything. They're going to be I'll be showing up in court against them, and they'll have to pay. So that's just the way it's going to be.
But the U.S. is not the leader anymore. We're seeing, our dollar being printed or clicked.
Yeah, well, that's oblivion. We all can see that. Go down to your store, see what the prices are.
Right. What do you see as the trend in the future? And do you see another country being the world leader? And what does that look like for America?
Well, actually, I think Russia, the ruble, is going to be a huge trading currency. Mm-hmm. And because it's based on the commodities that the Russian nation produces. It's a Russian nation, the number one producer of oil, big producer of gold, wheat, all those now. It's the biggest country in the world. So it has the biggest set of resources. And so Yeah, I mean, look at the Europeans. I don't know if they're going to do it. I mean, on April 1st, Russia said, you got to pay for your gas and oil and coal and wheat and every damn thing else for unfriendly countries in the ruble, and they have basically by the end of this month to pay in the ruble. Otherwise, Russia's cutting off the natural gas and oil and coal to Europe, or to Hungary said they're going to pay in rubles, but the other ones haven't quite said that yet. But either they pay or they don't get gas, and there's no way. I mean, natural gas thing to put it in, they have these liquid natural gas carriers. They got to come. I mean, and the facilities you got to build, that can't happen overnight. They won't have gas by, the Germans and the rest of the Europeans are going to be freezing this winter unless they start buying energy in rubles. And then that's, of course, we all know that ruble just got pegged to the gold. I think it's like 5,000 rubles per ounce. Yeah. Right now, I think it's somewhere
per gram.
Per gram, yeah, that's right, per gram, yeah, per gram, which puts it something like $1,400 an ounce. Now, the problem with Russia is the central bank of Russia is run by a very evil woman who works for the Rothschild banking dynasty. Russia doesn't have has a private central bank that's run by that, the city of London, and they're totally sabotaging the Russian war. Putin needs to arrest that woman and nationalize the private national bank of Russia. It's like our Federal Reserve, right? The Federal Reserve, it's not federal. It's run by, the 5 big banks that buy into it. It's a private entity, right. In Russia. So Russia's being actively sabotaged by its, I can't remember her name, who runs the Russian, quote, national bank, but it's actually a private bank. And she's a criminal that belongs in jail. And like, for instance, the ruble was rising, then she dropped interest rates, so the ruble dropped, but it won't stop the rise. The ruble will go up, 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 and at some point, the price of the ruble will punch through the fixed London gold market, right? Because that's going to happen. And at that point, who knows? Because they've been fixing. Look at inflation, right? It's been 20% or whatever it is, but you haven't seen 20% inflation in gold and silver. That's because Bix Weir gets on and he talks about how they fix the price. They can create infinite monies of U.S. dollars and then fix the price to whatever they want. The only problem is every time they use that dollar club, it's kind of wearing away. And that's the power of the dollar as the world trading currency. And their club, they're using it on Russia, they use it on Iran, they've used it on Iraq, they're kind of threatening to use it on China. Well, now the Chinese and the Russians trade in their own currencies, right? They don't need the US dollar. They don't do any of that anymore. Now, if you want anything from Russia, because Russia, they've been banned, right? They stole $300 billion of Russians' foreign reserves in European banks and a couple American banks, right? And, they just stole it. That's pure ass theft, just like the Federal Reserve stole $9 billion from the Afghanistanis, right? They're starving, and then the U.S. steals $9 billion of their money. That was Bank of Afghanistan's money, right? And the U.S. just stole it, and they need it. They can't even trade with other countries, right? That people are starving. And they tried to pull that on the Russia, it didn't work. And so they keep pounding the dollar as a club. Every time they do it, that becomes less and less. And eventually, this could end with the world, with the dollar no longer being the world trading currency. I mean, the Chinese foreign minister went down to Saudi Arabia and said, hey, let's trade in yuan for oil because we're your biggest customer. And most of the stuff you buy is from China. So, we can just send you on and you'll just send it back to buy Chinese products. So, the more of these retards down at, and the thing is, you got to realize, even though these people are, quote, intelligent, they've jumped through hoops, because of the selection process for what goes into political things, the Ivy League schools, these people are very narrow. There really is you don't learn real history in Ivy League schools or anything else. They just go for their little specialty and maybe some 100 classes, and nothing but propaganda lies are taught in these schools. So they don't really know anything about history. They don't really know a lot about science or the real stuff. They get this propaganda bullshit. And so these are uneducated adults. They're specialized in one little thing that they know, but they have no life experience. All they've been doing their lives is jumping through hoops and kissing ass and licking boots. That's all they know how to do. And that's what they expect people below them to do. And that's what they do to people above them. So these people have no imagination, no capacity. It's like the CIA. You try to get, the CIA was, my dad was like the original OSS pilot, right? Which was the forerunner of the CIA. When they ever sent missions like that mission to Vietnam, these other ones, he did it all, right? Because they pulled them all, the Army Air Corps did that. But the first bunch of CIA guys, they were like some really shady characters. They were like no good nicks. A lot of them were drunks, gun runners, use illicit drugs, probably had a little sexual proclivities that probably wouldn't fit. I mean, they were like, some of the scum, like the scum you take out of a Star Wars bar. But that's the kind of people you need in the operation, right? That's the people. And it worked there. Now they have all these things. You can't have done this, that, or the other thing. And so what do they end up in the CIA now is no-neck Mormons. That's what it is. It's no-neck Mormons. People that are maybe really good Catholic boys, people that have never done anything in their lives, stepped out of the box, always been on that straight and narrow. And you put them up against, the real
bad guys.
Services. They just do circles around it. Like my dad was, he ended up like 2-star DIA as a field operative in Saudi Arabia, like when the Iran thing was going down. And he'd just go to like Jordan and the Oman, he'd say, hey, he gave the taxi driver $20 and the taxi driver drove around and showed him all the CIA safe houses in Oman.
Because it was that obvious to the.
It's that obvious. And that's the way it is anywhere in the world. The CIA is not an intelligence agency. It's more like a thuggery operation.
It's the unintelligence agency.
Yeah, they're just pathetic because they don't have people. They don't have the real people you need to run an intelligence agency. Guys like Putin, he was in the KGB. When the Eastern Germany collapsed and whatever, everybody ran off. He stood in front of the KGB headquarters in Eastern Germany with a pistol and held off the mobs, and that's why that place wasn't looted, right? One guy against a mob with a pistol, and that's why the KGB archives in Germany, Eastern Germany, were never looted, because that's the kind of tough guy he is. He's a tough mother, and that's the kind of people that they have in the KGB, right?
Wow.
And the Chinese intelligence services and all the rest. Here we have no-neck Mormons and and some Ivy League scum suckers. That's our CIA.
So when we see the meme of Putin riding a bear, that's basically accurate.
And in our case, it'd be our CIA director being chased by a chihuahua.
Oh boy.
Yes.
That's the way it is. And it wasn't like that in the original, but they got rid of the originals and now they have, they have a joke. They have guys that can't do anything. They're pathetic.
Bizarre.
They can intimidate people and they can maybe kill people occasionally, and cause problems for,
get them to jump out of windows.
Mostly what the CIA does anyway these days is harass Americans.
And have planned events and drills that turn into live events in, let's say, some subways.
They do all
or
seem to
something
shop
like
at LL Bean and have good.
They're very fashionable,
well.
especially because originally it was originally the white shoe boys from Wall Street, but that where's the CIA, because it's really never been part of the U.S. government. It's like the Federal Reserve. It's actually an independent agency, and it was it was run by the soft shoe boys from the Wall Street, but originally those guys from Wall Street were some pretty shady characters, crooked money launderers, drug money laundering, all kinds of weapons smuggling. Those guys at Wall Street, the first batch came in, they were, like Donovan and the rest of those guys. Yeah, they're sketchy characters, but that's what you need in an intelligence agency. Now, they're these Ivy League, jump through hoop type peoples.
But that's where, like, when you're seeing, the recent exposure of the Crossfire Hurricane thing and all that, and them saying, like, well, look how they weaponized the FBI and how all that was. And then that was, the FBI knew about all that. For a long time and did nothing with it. Well, in the way our government is set up and the constitutionally, and actually, Mr. T had several of these things, the executive orders put in place to just defund these things. You don't have to necessarily do anything to get rid of them. You just turn the paycheck off, because they're not in the structure of our government. They're not a place, they're a charter. So you just turn off the paycheck and they go away.
Oh, well, see, the FBI used to be run by Gay Hoover, right? And he had files on everybody. So if they tried to intimidate him to pull some scam like this Russian,
it's all bribery, and
he would have said, go F yourself, and here's some pictures of you with this, that, or the other thing, if you're going to argue with me. So he used to run it with a pretty iron hand, and he had files on everybody, so nobody messed with him. But today's thing, it's just all these guys. You look at what happens is all the leadership of all these things, in the military too. Like Austin, he's like the Joint Chiefs of Staff now. Where was he? He was at top of the U.S. He was like one of those bootlicking weasels from probably the academy. and he just rose and did everything he did. And then when he became chief of the army, then he retired out and he went on a board with Raytheon, right? And he'll just do whatever he's told. He's a bootlicker ass kifter. And
Because
so
that's what they do.
Yeah,
they rise up and then they get a contract to be on a board somewhere and retire wealthy.
Exactly. And so then they pulled him back. But that's the way it is with Christopher Wray or any of these other guys that are in the all of the top leadership of these people. That's what they do. They go to get one of these fellowships or on the Atlantic Council or whatever it is. That's what they do. And then they'll be there. Then they'll pull them back and put them in government positions because these guys have always kissed ass, always done what they've told. And so there's the guys on top who are manipulating it, and they're a different class of people. They go to different schools, different minds. They're still ruthless and efficient, but their manipulated class of all the lackeys that they have is just their quality of these guys have gone down. They have no imagination. They have no capacity. All they have says yes sir, no sir. I'll sign the paper here. They're good order followers, and they'll do what they're told, but they have no imagination. And so the Chinese and Russian intelligence services or anybody else can just run circles around them. And they're really good, like the FBI. They are really good at setting people up, like that kidnapping the governor of Michigan, right?
Yes.
Turned out that half the people were FBI informants, and they were paying all the bills and setting it up, and they just got like 2 of them got acquitted, and then there was unfixed charges on the other 2. They couldn't be decided, so it was a mistrial. Because it's things, or like one time they had these like poor black kids, so poor they were living in a warehouse, just abandoned warehouse, right? And some FBI guy comes, buys them new tennis shoes, right, and some clothes and some food to eat, and then convinces them, we're going to do a Muslim revolution, right? Of course, it got thrown out eventually, but these kids had no capacity. They're great at setting people up and and intimidating, but they can't really catch criminals and they can't really stop stuff. And but it's easy, if it looks good on paper, that's what they'll do, and that's why we're losing. And look at if you look at the media, you think that the Ukrainians were crushing the Russians in Ukraine, but no, the Russia did exactly everything right. It went into Kiev, and then Ukraine rushed all of its forces up there, but the ones in Donbass, and then they pulled out, and now all their forces are trapped around Kiev, and Russia's going to surround the forces in Donbass and crush them, and the Ukrainian forces in Donbass and crush them, and then that's it. They won. And classic feint and thing and double thing. It doesn't matter what they send, all the weapons that's going to Ukraine. That's just going to end up in the Russians' pockets, and then they're going to send it to pretty soon the Syrians are going to have all these Stinger missiles and anti-tank weapons. That the Russians have captured huge weapons supplies of that, and anyone else that the U.S. is facing is all of a sudden going to have all these new weapons, so that the Russians got for free. And
so it's just a way to pass it around to their buddies that they've already planned that out.
It's like free weapons, free money. I mean, it's like they left $85 billion of U.S. weaponry. The Chinese buy that from the Afghanistans and then send it to their allies. And the same thing's happening in Ukraine. But Ukraine's going to be poor after this, and so what's left of the Ukrainian military will be happy to sell, any of those aid that the West sent them to the Russians under the table for a bunch of money. That's the way Ukraine works. If you've ever been there,
yeah, it's crazy. I'm trying to find this one tweet, and of course, it's been deleted. But Elon Musk posted a tweet that looked similar to this, where he says, "Truth is the first casualty of war." This one's about something I can't share, but where he's talking about media, but he was talking about the weather, and now it's gone.
Oh yeah, it's easy. Yeah, the weather is modified.
There are degrees in weather modification, correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So are you seeing or anticipating more of, and then I was watching, I had a guy on my Patreon today that he does some astrology, but he's also talking about the 4th turn and then Jupiter return and some other things. And he was talking about that historically, people would say, like, in the ancient times and stuff, people would follow along and everybody's fine until the gods got angry and the weather would get bad, and then the people would revolt, and there'd be either floods or ice ages or whatever, and the crops would go bad and the people would revolt. And I'm thinking of Cliff High's data of, this ice age incoming. And then I know Cliff was talking about people moving to the southern belt, and this guy's talking about astrologically people moving to the southern belt. And it's like all these voices are saying kind of the same thing. And then he put in that historically, and he's talking about like ancient times kind of historically, and linking the weather into it. And then I was thinking back to the Elon Musk thing, talking about the weather is fake or manipulated. Do you see that all playing into what we're living in right now, and how weather's manipulated maybe to trigger the people to revolt against what's happening right now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at Iran and some other enemies of the U.S., they just have incredible droughts and terrible things happen to them because they have geo-weather engineering, and that's who is that guy that does that? Oh, I can't remember his name. Oh well, it's if you go to geo-weather engineering on YouTube and look him up, you'll see he's on every Saturday, putting his geo-weather engineering, and it's not chemtrails, it's geo-weather engineering. Just go on YouTube, pick it up. You'll see Dane Wigington, I think is his name. And and that's the stuff they do when they spray out of planes. There's other methods. I mean, they have a method in Dubai where they release electrical ions into the atmosphere through these towers.
Mm-hmm. HARP was Hurricane Sandy here on the East Coast. We watched. Yeah. There used to be a website, and then it's since gone, where they registered the levels coming out of HARP, and we watched it go from normal to white, which was way off the charts. And then all of a sudden we had 20-foot storm surges coming in, water where there's never been water before. We had a house at the Jersey Shore at the time. The water was over the top of our mailbox, and we had fish in the pots and pans under the sink. This had never happened anything like that.
Oh yeah, before. Yeah. Because what they can do is,
we called it. We watched the thing go to white when you could go to HARP, and it was just amazing.
Yep. They can do that. They can they heat the atmosphere above the hurricane in the upper levels because they can focus it. Because there's dozens of HARP things around the world. The one in Hawaii, I don't even think they use the one in Alaska anymore.
That was the one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's old tech, but you can phase array them, and they'll heat like the atmosphere up, and then rising air, kind of pull the hurricane along. I mean, it's not, they have all kinds. I work with Trevor James Constable, etheric rain engineering. And if you go there, Trevor's passed away, but you can still see some of his stuff. So I know I'm like the only guy left who really knows what Trevor James Constable did. There's a couple old guys, but I think they're passed. So so I can do, if you notice where I live in Colorado, it's kind of like, not in drought, it's dry, but it's not in drought. If you look, you'll see you just go to the U.S. drought monitor and see that. But I don't have the skills like the U.S. government does that can the resources, that they can do. Like look at Iran. Iran just had drought after drought because they're trying. They're the enemy. Same as Syria. They want to block clouds and stuff from coming there and raining so that they can starve their enemies out.
Yeah.
So that's just technology of war. They've taken a lot from. They were doing it in Vietnam to try to create massive amounts of rain on the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Yeah, they were dumping aluminum particles in the clouds, I believe. Cloud seeding. That was one of the original cloud seeding.
Exactly. Or whatever they were using. Yeah. Sometimes they use ammonium nitrate. I had an uncle-in-law that used to do that. He'd get old Mustangs and fly. He was hired he'd dump the silver iodine or sometimes dry ice, and they'd fly. They were actually hired by the wine growers in Napa, which are these really, and they would, when there was a thunderstorm going, they would fly through with their planes dumping that and cut the top of the thunderstorm off so you wouldn't get hail that would damage the grape crops. So, I mean, that was in the 50s. So, I mean, wow. That was the 50s. This is 2020, right? So you can imagine the level of technology that's developed there. And most of that, there's another time, I think it was in the 80s, or I think it was in the early 80s, they got this weather modification group was working off the coast of Brazil. And then they had this terrible frost that killed a bunch of the coffee crop or damaged it. And then they found that company was directly related to another company which had gone long on coffee futures and just made $1.5 billion. And that was back in the early 80s or either late 70s or early 80s. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that goes on all the time.
That sounds like something Fancy Nancy would get into. Yeah.
There was a Disney video put out a while ago. It was black and white, and it was a long time ago. And it was basically all about weather modification, how they can steer storms. And this was, again, like you mentioned, a long time ago, black and white video that I watched about it. And it was produced by Disney. It had Walt Disney on there explaining how these things are going. Very interesting. I'll try and find the link, and I'll post it in the comments if I can find it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just gone on for a long time. There's all kinds of other technology, they have that exists, that, it's privilege for them. I mean, I could do a whole show about all underground Denver. I mean, this Denver is technically the second capital of the United States, and they've got like an underground fantasy world underneath this area, Colorado, like you never believe. They've spent tens of billions of dollars on it.
All black money.
Yeah, well,
Black project
it's
money.
your tax money. They just don't want to tell you where they spend it on. I'm sure a lot of it leaks out into people's pockets,
Yeah.
and then overseas into Cayman Island accounts, and then back through BlackRock and Vanguard, so that they can, anyway, that's the way life goes.
Consolidate and start over. Yep.
Yes. So, but I just live my life, and I'm not part of that system. By the way, I never, my dad went to the military, and he went up, he's a colonel, retired. They brought him back. But, and I never went into the government services. I have no security clearances, because he sat me down and said, once you sign those papers, you're their bitch for life. And so.
Oh, really? So he did not encourage you to do that.
Yep.
Wow.
So I never signed those papers, so I'm not their bitch for life, and I'm not. I have no access to top secret information, and have no security clearances whatsoever.
There you go.
Interesting.
There you go. Wow. Well, we appreciate all the information that you share with us, and
Absolutely.
And C60 stuff has been amazing for us, and your scientific knowledge is amazing. You guys, there's all the links in the description of how you can make sure that you sign up to get your subscription, or your, we did a subscription just because we wanted to make sure we get the bottle every month at our house here. So
Yeah,
that you can also purchase different ways.
Yeah, we're going to be raising prices here, because we have no choice. Our price of bottles went up 125%. Oils have gone up huge amounts. And so. But if we're raising them in mid May, I believe. But if you get in now, I think it's coming out this weekend, some of the emails. If you get your subscription now, you're locked in for a year with the lower price.
Okay. That's great.
That's great. Inflation has come to us too. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just, it's everywhere.
It's hitting everyone. Yeah, definitely. We'll make
Let's
sure
go,
to
Brandon.
my code LTC Lisa when you sign up, because that helps support the channel.
Yes.
And I would appreciate that. Ken, we hope to have you back very soon. And I just love having you on. You are full of so much knowledge. So I'm like, okay, which question do I want to go?
Where's it going to go? Went like
Where
this
am I
the whole
gonna go?
time.
Which
It's
question
great.
am I going to ask?
Well, just me making sure we don't get too little outside the box.
Yeah, I want to keep my channel.
Talk about, because the way that censorship is these days, and it's just getting worse. It's ridiculous.
Maybe a Patreon video next month where we can get, or another
Yes.
platform where we can really
Yes.
discuss some of this.
Oh yeah, I can
stuff.
say things that I can't say here. I mean, I probably said too much anyway.
I've seen a few of your videos where you've said much more.
Yes,
They're fantastic.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
BitChute, because they don't last long on YouTube.
So next month I'll set one up on a platform that we can go off the rails. So
I would love that.
That would be awesome. All right, guys. Well, have a great night. I'm going to be jumping on the AMA for Crypto Confidential here in little less than an hour. If you're not already in my community, there's a link in the description to check that out. My attorney, Michelle Harper, will be there to ask questions about Crypto Confidential, as well as the other experts that will be live for you to ask questions and join that as well. So you guys can check that out. And we'll be back next time. Thanks so much, Ken and public. I'll see you next week.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Ken.
Yep. Bye.